there must be a technical issue or something, I
Okay,
imagine.
perfect. We'll just give
He
him a
will.
sec.
He will be along though. Don't worry.
Wonderful. Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. There he is. Good morning, Tim. Good afternoon.
Morning.
Oh, okay, team. It looks like the gang's all here. So, Sabine, if it's okay with you, do you mind if we kick off and just jump right in? Excuse me. Good morning, good morning, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining. So as I've mentioned to everybody, I've spoken to everybody, we're in sort of phase 3 of the sales training that we're doing this time around with CAD. And this portion, we're focused on social selling. So we've set up 3 workshops for 1 hour each over the next 3 Tuesdays, today and the next 2 Tuesdays. And I couldn't be more excited with the team that we have to deliver the workshop. So as part of what we do within the funnel, we partner with some of the best people in the world doing different components of professional sales. And I will say I'm so thrilled to have, about, I guess, 6 months to 9 months ago, I found these fellows. And Tim Hughes is actually the author of a spectacular book called Social Selling. Some of you, when we had our interviews, have read this book. This is an enormously successful book at leveraging social media for professional B2B sales. It's in its second, if not third printing, which I know my first book's coming out in July. You have to be enormously successful for the publisher to want to print the book again. Tim's also listed as a top 8 sales expert to follow globally on LinkedIn. So with his partner, Adam Gray, these are folks, of course, based in the UK. They know what they're talking about in terms of social selling, some of the top thought leaders in the world. So they're going to run the next 3 workshops for us, 1 hour each. They've also graciously offered to have one-on-ones in between the workshops with anybody who would like that type of coaching. So if, as we're talking about things here, if you'd like one-on-one coaching, we're going to send an email after today with their calendars so you can book in with that. But that's how we're going to try and help elevate the performance of the team. And without further ado, I think I'm just going to pass it over to 2 great guys, Adam Gray and Tim Hughes. Guys, take it from there. And who's ever owning the meeting, if you could just ensure that the gentlemen have access to share their screen, and they do.
They do. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. So first of all, can everyone see that? Okay.
Yes.
Brilliant. So thank you very much. Lovely intro, Mark. So I guess that first of all we need to sort of set the scene a little bit, and you probably already have some experience of being on social media, and you'll know that on LinkedIn, and this may well have clouded your opinion of what social selling is. You're constantly getting spammed by sales messages. Hi, I'd like to tell you that I do this. I think you should buy from me. We solve these problems. I work with businesses like yours all the time, and the constant stream of verbiage. Now, first of all, it's good to define social selling in a slightly different way, I think. You can't sell over social. You can only spam people. So this absolutely, and I'll read the slide here. Social selling is using your presence and behavior to build influence, make connections, grow relationships and trust, which leads to conversations and commercial interaction. Particularly with what you guys do, it is a trust-based sale. Until you have built trust with the recipient, nobody is going to believe a word you say or even listen to what you say. So any complex sale, any strategic sale, absolutely is based on building those relationships first. And the reason for being on social is it enables you to do that very efficiently and at scale. Now, I think what's really interesting is that most of us can do this in the real world. You know, we go to parties, we go to coffee shops and meet people, and we shake hands with them, and we strike up a conversation with them, and we exchange business cards, and we build some sort of relationship with those people. And it's a very human, very natural thing to do this. What we find is when people port this behavior onto social media, they forget all of that and they turn it into a sales pitch, and they're like that sort of Danny DeVito in Ruthless People, where he's wearing the check jacket, you know, or opening your jacket and saying, do you want to buy a watch? Because there's a huge selection of watches in there. You know, it's tasteless, but most people seem to behave that way. So what we need to do is we need to think about how we can scale those human interactions in the digital world. So to begin with, everybody, please turn your cameras on if you haven't done so already. Just that it's lovely to be able to see everybody. I've done hundreds of these presentations where I'm talking to a blank room and no one's looking back at me, and that's a terribly grim experience. So any questions or comments that you have, please put them in the chat, and Tim will field those and we'll sort of collate those towards the end of the session. If there's anything burning, you know, please do shout, because it's quite important that we try to reshape how you view this as much as anything else. So if you think about your journey on LinkedIn, or indeed on any social platform, but we have to pick one for the moment, so it might as well be LinkedIn. If you imagine that as being a huge cocktail party, and everybody that you ever want to meet or talk to or have a conversation with or form a relationship with is there at that party. But you're not going to walk up to somebody that you've never met before and ask them to marry you, because that's inappropriate. But what you are, I see Harris is raising an eyebrow there. Maybe that's worked well for you in the past. It hasn't worked well for me, I can tell you that. But joking aside, you know, it's inappropriate to behave that way. So what you need to do is you need to build relationships with people over time. And the first question is, when people leave that cocktail party, what would they like to think about you? And this is it, you know, you want people to think you're interesting, that you're kind, that you're generous, that you're helpful, that you're the kind of person that they would like to get to know better. And the reason that we need to view it in this way is that you'll be aware of this, but let's flag it just so you see the numbers. Social is really big. Of the 5.4 billion people in the world that have an internet connection, over 5 billion of them are active on social media, which means basically everybody that we want to talk to is accessible through these channels. So once upon a time, you might have lifted the argument saying, yeah, but the point is that the people I want to talk to, they are there. They absolutely are there. And what's interesting is that as time goes by, they're spending more and more of their time there. The average now is 2.5 hours nearly per person per day on social channels. So they're not going and posting pictures of their lunch or liking a few things. They're investing significant amounts of time on these channels. And I think what is also important is that nearly 3/4 of these people are using social channels as a way of doing their brand research. So yes, that may well be training shoes and cars, but it's also what you sell. It's also complex, strategic, life-changing purchases that they're drawing information. And even if they're not making all of their decision based on what they find on social, they're making some of their decision from what they find on social, and it's helping to shape those opinions that they form. Now, what we've known for some time is that the sales environment has changed for complex sales. Some years ago, CEB did this research. You will have seen this, of course. Nearly 60% of people were 60% of people were 60% of the way through the buying journey before the seller knew the buyer was there. Recent research from Sixth Sense has shown that that's now 70%. Against this, we also see that the complexity of the buying team has increased, where once upon a time we were selling to 1 or 2 people. Now we're selling to a much larger group of people. We're having to get consensus in that group. And one of the challenges that we face is that the bigger the group, the less likely we are to get consensus. So often our biggest challenger now is people just failing to make a change. We'll just stay with the incumbent, or we won't make a decision now. And most organizations deal with this in the time-honored way of just doing nothing, hoping that things will get better. You know, we've got another campaign, another event, another documents being published, and we hope that that will change the landscape, and it doesn't. Now, Tim and I were having a chat about this earlier today, and Tim brought this quote out, which I absolutely love. Kurt Cobain, lead singer of Nirvana, famously said, "They laugh at me because I'm different. I laugh at them because they're all the same." And this is the challenge that all of us face on social media. Because although we think we look different from everybody else, when the customer looks out onto social, this is what they see. You know, like that lovely image from Being John Malkovich, where everybody appears to be the same. And you think you may be different from everybody else because you've got that little veneer of brilliance over and above how good they are. But from the customer's perspective, obviously, this is not always obvious to them. Now, one of the challenges that we have to do is we have to try to look different from the other people on these platforms. So there's some very sound psychological reasons for this. There is a technique called Gestalt thinking, or a science called Gestalt thinking. So if you are in a room with, or in a group of people who look just like you, this is what people see when they look at you. It doesn't matter which person they pick. All of these people appear to be the same. They've all got similar experience, similar levels of expertise, similar number of years in business, all of those things that we hold on to because they're part of how we define ourselves from a work perspective. But from the buyer's perspective, it just means that it doesn't matter who they choose. If, however, we're able to make ourselves look different, we stand out from that group. Now, what's interesting is because how the brain makes patterns of things, what the brain sees is not 16 people anymore. What it sees is 15 people and you. So you improve your chances of being remembered from 1 in 16 to 1 in 2 simply by looking wildly different from everybody else. Now, the reason that matters so much on these platforms is, hi, we have a burning question from Brooke, I think.
I do. Well, it's actually more of a statement, but I've thought about this thinking a lot. And I think what people sometimes don't connect is that it's not 1 in 16 other pensions that we're competing with. It's 1 in 16 other salespeople in anything, right? So
perfect.
People just think, yeah, we're different because we're a different pension plan, but it's not. It's us competing on LinkedIn with the guy who's trying to sell, software, and the guy who's also ruthlessly trying to get us to go to the event, and it's all of them, not just people within our industry and within our sector and beyond. So I think, anyways, I'll let you take it from there, but I've thought about this a lot.
No, that's absolutely perfect. And actually, I was going to flag that later on. So I'm glad that you did actually say that. So the challenge that we have on this platform, or these platforms that have literally billions of people, is that if you say, I'm a business development manager, there's 1.9 million people that look just like you. If you say you're CEO, there's 7 million people that look just like you. Even if you say you're a thought leader, because you're somebody that creates content and you identify yourself as a thought leader, the challenge is that there's still 100,000 people that claim also to be thought leaders. So what we need to do is we need to think about how we differentiate ourselves from the pack. Now, the reality of how people consume content and how they build trust is they build it with people, not with brands. Even though CAP may be the most trusted brand that there is, still people build relationships with individuals and not with companies. And I think that one of the most shocking statistics on this, now, none of us are Cristiano Ronaldo, let's be honest, but Cristiano Ronaldo on Instagram, except you, Mark, Cristiano Ronaldo on Instagram has 7 times as many followers as all of the top 10 brands in the world combined. Now, clearly, that's quite an extreme example. But what it does show is that personality trumps brand. I can fall in love with you. I can build a relationship with you. I can go for a drink with you. I can go for dinner with you. I can't do that with your company. And this absolutely is about building relationships with people one-to-one. And this is not about selling a product or a service. This is about selling a concept, selling trust, selling conversation, selling belief. So the biggest tool that we have is our profile. You know, that footprint that we have on the internet, that footprint that tells people who we are, what we do, where we've been, what we interact with, what we talk about, how we share things, all of that kind of good stuff about us. So this guy is the chief executive of, he's a client of ours, and a chief executive of a company that does drone mapping of oil and gas facilities. And he's a great example of this. You know, what he hasn't done is he hasn't begun his headline by saying chief executive of Cyberhawk, because chief executive tells you very little, like sales manager and business director and chief executive tells you very little about who somebody is. And certainly in the case of Cyberhawk, they may be the biggest drone mapping company in the world, but no one's ever heard of them. So it's a valueless thing to put there. So what he's done is he's put a headline up which suggests that it's worth looking a little bit deeper into his profile. And absolutely, you know, when you consider that every single person that you're in competition with, and as you said, Brooke, that's not just people in your industry, every single person is literally one click away. It's really important that your headline is arresting and that it makes me look further into your profile. So this is a few people that have got great headlines. And they're great because they're different from the norm that you might see. Now, some of these are people at small businesses. Catherine Cole, Pamela Davinsky, Bertrand Godilot. These are people that work for themselves or work in micro businesses. But equally, we've got someone from Telstra, someone from Nokia, someone from Oracle, and someone from Salesforce on here, which are multinational companies with hundreds of thousands of staff. So it doesn't matter whether you're in a big company or a little company. What does matter is that how you present yourself reflects who you are rather than what you do. So now we're going to have an exercise. So we're going to take 5 minutes to have a go at writing a headline that reflects who we are. So not something that says head of marketing or chief executive or head of sales, but something that is a reflection of who rather than what. So it might say, frankly, I'd rather be sailing around the world on my yacht. That's perfectly okay to put that, because you need to remember that the things that you find interesting, the things that define who you are, the things that you would still do tomorrow if you won the lottery this evening, those things are not just interesting to you, they're interesting to other people as well. So I'll leave those up on the screen as inspiration. 5 minutes, starting now. See what you can come up with. I thought what we would do is we would spend 5 minutes writing these. Some people that would like to share them, we can have a couple of shares for people that think they've got something good, to show that it's difficult but doable, and then we'll move on. Thanks, Mark. Okay. So how have you all got on with that? I know that this is quite a tricky ask, and it's perfectly okay for this to be tricky and scary. Don't worry. We've spent all of our business careers writing about what we do, and this is more about who we are, which is a different concept and a different way of doing things.
So there's a number starting to appear in the chat, Adam.
Ah, fantastic.
So Mark Cox has said he's suggesting he's drummer, goalie, and lifelong learner.
Nice, nice. But anyway, music is a good thing.
Brooke is saying storyteller, measurement and analytics nerd, and fan of the Oxford comma.
And fan of the Oxford comma.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Learning never exhausts the mind.
Ian Holroyd is saying embracing new challenges and new ideas without allowing fear or anxiety to stand in my way.
Brilliant.
Elsie is saying campaign crusader, fighting for brand visibility.
Oh, there's some fantastic stuff going on there. So well done, everybody. And this is kind of quite a scary first step to take in this space. And I think that one of the things that we need to reflect on when we're doing these difficult challenges, and they are difficult challenges, is that when you write about what you do, there's a fear. Well, if I rubbish what you do, if I say, oh, it's nonsense, you're not a very good company, you can basically fold your arms and go, okay, well, you're wrong. If, however, you say, look, here's my baby, isn't it beautiful? And I say, no, it's the ugliest thing I've ever seen. That's really hurtful. Now, in this space, very rarely do people say nasty things, but it still carries with it a huge stigma and fear of people saying things that can hurt you. And when you wear your heart on your sleeve, when people say things that you don't like, it can be quite hurtful and challenging to hear those things sometimes. But the reality of this is that it moves people closer to you. And that's what we're trying to do. A friend of Tim's, a guy called Brian Fanzo, is quite a well-known podcaster. And he coined the expression, social media turns the first handshake into a hug, which I think is a fantastic expression. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to move yourself into a position where you're closer to these people than you otherwise might be. And Brooke's comment about how you're in competition with lots of different industries and lots of different salespeople and lots of different ideas for share of people's minds, it's exactly that. I want people to be having a conversation with me rather than with one of my competitors. Even if the competitor is not going for the same budget that I'm going for, they're all going for the same mind, if you like. So well done, everybody, with that. That's fantastic. So what we need to do is we need to take that and then we need to fill out that top box. So this box that is at the top of Chris's profile, we need to do a similar kind of thing with ours. We need to make sure that this, effectively, our digital business card, this is the first thing that people see about you when they land on your profile. We need to make sure that this is as complete, visually interesting and arresting as it can possibly be. So we need a nice photo of you, not something that looks, like it's got the height measurement behind where you've been arrested and whatever, but something which captures the essence of who you are. So if you speak at events and you're very animated and great, photos like that are really good because we get to see a bit of personality as well as just how you look. But a nice photo, a nice background photo, something which may be something which is personal to you, something certainly which is interesting and colourful or eye-catching if possible. One of the things that never ceases to amaze us is when people invest time in their profile and they don't then bother to give anyone a way of getting in touch with you. So, on your profile, you've got room to put your email, telephone number if that's appropriate, website, postal address, other social profiles. So everything that you can possibly put in there, you should. In the same way as when you hand somebody a business card, it hasn't just got your telephone number on it, it hasn't just got your email on it, it's got every possible contact medium. You should do the same here, because maybe I'm desperate to talk to Mark, but I'm not comfortable on the telephone. Okay, so send him an email. Maybe I want to write him a letter even. So giving all of those different mechanisms is really important. Some of you have already done this, having a look at your profiles, but what you can do is you can personalize your LinkedIn URL. So by default, it will be linkedin.com/in/Adam-Gray- and then a random string of characters, BC853066C2. Now, clearly, that's not particularly catchy. So you might be able to modify that to something which is better. So I was fortunate enough to be able to get Adam Gray. If I tried now, I wouldn't be able to, because obviously I've already got that. So I could be Mr. Adam Gray, the Adam Gray, Adam-Gray, Adam Gray, social selling, Adam Gray, handsome bald chap, whatever it was that I chose to put there, I could put that. But anything which makes it look like you've just put in a little bit more effort here is really, really important. You should also try to add everything which might convince people that you're somebody that they should listen to. So education, volunteering, everything that can go in that box to make it look like you have causes and you're the right person. And also your birthday, because actually this is about having conversations with people. And if you're connected to 1,000 people and 2% of them send you a message on your birthday saying happy birthday, well, that's 20 people that have messaged you. And that could be 20 people that can open doors for you or you would want to have a conversation with. So giving people the opportunity to have a conversation with you is every bit as important as you having a conversation with them. And then lastly, you may well find, depending on what level of profile you have and how active you've been, you might be able to have a custom button, or might have a top voice for social selling or pensions advice, or whatever your specific area of expertise is. And that's quite a good thing to put there as well. Hi, Sabine.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You mentioned email in
Yeah.
On the LinkedIn. So in our experience, I mean, in my experience, I'm speaking for the entire group here, but generally we found that people don't post their email or their work email on LinkedIn. I'm not sure if that's different in the UK or not, but I mean, that would solve a lot of our problems if we had access to their email, because we've got some legislation here that, you know, we're not able to reach out to folks through their work email. It's called Castle legislation. So would you recommend that we put our emails on LinkedIn from, you know, from potential buyers accessing?
Absolutely. And the reason for that is that if I work for IBM and your email access to me says adamgray@ibm.com, that's a great deal more credible than if it's adamgray26@hotmail.com. So in terms of people reaching out to you, if I was to message you, Sabine, even though it's against legislation for me to do that from a corporate perspective, if I was to message you and say, I'd really like you to come and sort out pensions for everyone in my company, is that okay? I'm sorry to message you on your email. You're not going to report me, are you? You're going to say, thank you very much for messaging me. When can we have a coffee? So yeah, I would always put your work email address there. Now that's not necessarily, it doesn't have to be the email address which is associated with the account. So if you wanted to keep the account in your own personal email address, that's fine, but definitely put your work email address there as a contact.
Sorry, just to flag this for later, I think maybe we want to put a generic email like a pensions matter at cappension.ca. It's something we can take offline, but
no, definitely not. It should definitely make it your own personal email. And the reason for that is that I'm desperate to speak to Karen because I really like Karen. I really don't like you, Sabine, and I don't want to talk to you. And remember that as a company, what we're looking to do is we're looking to pick the low-hanging fruit. And that's why when everybody is being themselves, you know, I really like Mark because he's a drummer. I don't like I don't like Eric because Eric is a saxophone player. Okay, well, that's fine. I'll have my own prejudices about why I'm going to pick one person and not another. And the reality is that as long as I'm reaching out to one of you, that's the bit that matters. And leading with who we are is the best way of unlocking that. So definitely a personal email. And you will probably find, certainly we invariably find, that the first contact will come through a LinkedIn message anyway. But it may well be that somebody decides they do want to email you, in which case better to do it person to person. But when people land on your profile, what we need to recognize is that people are going to jump to conclusions. That's what people do. They see a little bit, they assume a lot. And our job is not to stop people from jumping to conclusions, but to make them jump to the conclusions that we want. So we need to make sure that we are telling the most attractive, most interesting, most compelling and engaging story that we possibly can. So when I've landed on Chris's profile, I've seen the bit at the top, I've seen stop, collaborate, listen, thought, oh, he's worth reading a little bit more about. The next section down is the about section. And the mistake that most people make is they write about their job in the about section. Well, you've got the job section to write about your jobs. This is about your why. This is about why you do what you do, not what you do. So often this will be a story about, well, you can read Chris's here. I tell my people don't die at work. Die base jumping, free diving, or taking your motorcycle too fast through a bend. You know, it's a really positive message, and it helps you understand who he is as a person, who he is as a leader. And for each of us, this is the bit we need to remember, that when somebody lands on our profile, they're going to read from the top down. If they read a really exciting bit at the top, they're likely to read on. If they read a really boring bit at the top, they're likely not to read on. And what we need to remember is that we're in competition with everybody else. And if I spend 20 minutes reading your profile and 5 minutes reading Tim's profile, by the end of that, I know you better than I know Tim. And that's your competitive advantage. So always you want to make this as accessible and friendly as possible. So writing that about section, writing something which gives me an understanding of why you've chosen this path through life. You know, when you were a child, you wanted to be an astronaut. Great, but you were too tall, too short, whatever, to be an astronaut. Therefore, you ended up doing this, and this, the beauty of this is blah. It's a lovely story to be able to tell. So once we've done that, we need to make sure that we're filling out everything that we can fill out. You know, we've all got an interesting, and in most cases, extensive job history. And we need to be really careful that when we're telling our job history, what we don't do is say, my first job was at this company, and I was responsible for this, this, and this, and I did this, this, and this. And then I moved to this company where I was responsible for this, this, and this, because that's what a CV looks like. And if you've ever had to read more than 2 or 3 CVs, you know, it's soul destroying work. There's a billion CVs on LinkedIn. So you need to tell me a story. You need to make it like an autobiography. So when I started at this job, I was so excited because I'd always wanted to be in this industry. And I had a fantastic team around me, but unfortunately, the company was acquired by another company and this went wrong and that went wrong. So I had to move. When I landed at this company, I thought, this is fantastic. I can take all of my skills that I learned at the first company and deploy them here. Or so I thought. But unfortunately, things didn't work out that way. And tell the story, tie one job to the next, to the next, to the next, and talk all about how you've got to where you've got, what your journey has been, what your learnings have been. When I started at this job, I thought I was perfectly suited to this. However, I'd never managed people before, and that showed up some significant shortcomings in my abilities. So my first challenge was to learn how to manage people. Then talk about what you learned, talk about your challenges, talk about how proud you were of the people around you, and all of that stuff, because there's no arrogance in that. It's simply telling a good story for people to engage with. But also put on your really early jobs. So the job on the left there, summer potato picker, that's Chris, the guy that's now chief executive of a publicly listed company that's worth tens of millions of dollars. That's his first job as a summer potato picker. Kitchen staff at the Royal Oak Public House, that was Tim. and relief postman for Christmas. That was me. And the reason these are really important is that one thing that most people have in common is that their first job was garbage. You know, working behind a bar, sweeping up, helping out in a kitchen, whatever the job was. It was awful. That's something we've all got in common. And the beauty of that is that that's a great bonding experience, but it's also, it helps set us on a particular path. We learn so many things. Busboy, exactly. But you know, the point is, it doesn't matter how far you go, we've all started from humble beginnings. So the exercise now is for you to have a go at writing that first job. We're going to take just 5 minutes for this. What was the first job you did? What was so great about it? What did you learn? And what have you carried with you? You know, these are important things that you can write into that. So just a quick brain dump of this, 5 minutes. How did everyone get on with that? Brilliant. So if anyone's got anything that's finished, pop it into the chat. Great. The beauty of all of this is that this gives you so many different touch points to engage with people. Tim often jokes to me that I only ever sell things to people that play the guitar, because I'm into the guitar and I've got some guitars hanging behind me. But the point is that's a touch point on which I can have conversations with people, as is your passion for snowboarding or walking or fast cars or collecting paintings or whatever it may be. And I think the really important thing is that when we put these things out there, we talk about where we've come from, what we've learned, what our journey's been, what our challenges have been, what we've overcome, what we're passionate about, what our hobbies are. It gives people so many different things that they can walk towards us over. You know, in exactly the same way when you meet somebody at that cocktail party or when you're queuing up to get a coffee and it turns out that you support the same hockey team. Clearly you will support the same hockey team anyway, but the same hockey team, or you drive the same car, or you've been on holiday to the same place. And then it's the basis for having a conversation. And it's a really lovely, friendly way to begin getting to know somebody. And the beauty of this is that the way that you can scale this, what you're not trying to do is move somebody from first conversation to close at that meeting. What you're looking to do is to put 100 people or 1,000 people or 10,000 people on the journey to buying from you. And then they will all come in at the time that suits them. So thank you for sharing that. That's absolutely fantastic. So before we wrap up today's session, who has some questions or concerns, maybe?
I have one. I'll sorry, I'll go on camera. I think sometimes in an effort to be unique, it can sometimes come across as gitchy. I'll be honest. Like, you know, if I see another LinkedIn profile about some kind of guru, everyone seems to have that these days, I immediately put my kind of stance up where, you know, it's too much. This isn't what I'm interested in. You know, these people aren't at the level that I want to be engaging with. I'm spammed by people like this all the time. So what are kind of strategies or suggestions you have to be unique and different, but also at the right level to kind of who we're selling to or what that feels like? I'm sure you've heard this question a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the thing to remember is that all you're selling in these platforms is a conversation. So this is about us forming some sort of bond that we can have a conversation about, and then we can move forward on. So let's assume that you've commented on the fact that I've got a guitar hanging behind me, and I say, "Do you play the guitar?" And you say, "Yes, I do." Okay, this is my sweet spot. So then I will reach out to you and I will ask to have a chat. You know, fellow guitar lovers, why would we not have a conversation? And you'd say yes. And then I've got you. As a salesperson, I have some degree of control over where that call goes in a way that I don't if I send you a message. If I send you a message that says, "Here are my products and services," the next step is over to you. If I get you on a call, I can be kind of much more reactive to how the conversation goes, as to how I move it from chatting about guitars to, "So explain to me, what is it that you actually do, Brooke, and why would I buy from you?" And then you tell me and I go, "That's really interesting." And then I'm looking for the opportunity to say, "Because here's what I do." And the beauty of this is that there is no explicit sales pitch in the stuff that we talk about in this space. You know, the expertise that you have in your chosen field, you can share. And that's really valuable, because I don't know anything about pensions. And you say the 3 things that everybody needs to know about pensions for when they retire is A, contribute from an early age. B, contribute as much as you can, and C, whatever C is. You know, these are the things that you have to know. And I read that and I go, wow, that's brilliant. That's really helpful. Or I think, well, I know that, but because I already know that to be true, and you've told me that stuff, that just means that you do know what you're talking about, because I already know that to be the case. So there's no downside to this. The only time there is a downside is if I believe the expression is commission breath. You know, if you sense that I'm here to sell you something, that's when it all falls down. But the only USP you have, the only unique thing you have, is who you are. Mark?
Yeah, to me, this just leads to, and Kat is very good at this, it leads to triggering a conversation almost like it came through a referral. Because when you get a referral or personal contact, you walk into that conversation, there's already a level of trust established. I'll use the analogy, the first time I met Horace, back then Horace had a LinkedIn profile that spoke to his amazing skill and capability. He's an artist and a super high-end artist. The first thing we spoke about in that room that day was his art, because I checked it out on LinkedIn. We started to have a real conversation and nothing to do with sales training. And so it's this trigger for a warm conversation, which is just exactly what we're trying to get to. And Brooke, you talk about not feeling comfortable. The beauty of this is you're actually being your authentic self. And you guys do this today. You do a lot of great work at trade shows, and you build great relationships, and you warm it up. And the first thing you say is not a sales pitch. You're sharing about you as human beings and building trust. That, to me, I've already made changes to my LinkedIn profile based on what we've been doing here. I've been going into my LinkedIn profile. This is going to change for me too.
Fantastic. So does anyone else have any questions or anything that anyone that's kind of really uneasy about this?
I mean, since Mark brought it up, I'm just going to say one thing, that we just have to be, it's a thin line to be careful on what conversations you're having, right? Like it's, I mean, there has to be a thin line between personal and professional. So, I mean, I don't know what you recommend that is, but I mean, I certainly struggle with that.
Yeah, I think everybody does to begin with. I think that there is a risk of sometimes of oversharing. You know, whilst a cry for help can be really great at getting people to warm to you, if all you do is cry for help, it can be quite uncomfortable for people around you. The main thing is just to be who you are. You know, we're all on this journey through life, and the things that excite you. Oh, look, there's a classic car in the street, will excite other people as well. So taking a photograph of the classic car and saying, look what just showed up outside my office today, then there'll be loads of people that will see that and go, oh, wow, that's fantastic. I used to have one of those when I was younger, or whatever. And remember that what we're looking for is to create an environment where people are happy to engage with you. If you do a post that says, we've got a great new pension product, nobody will like it. And the reason they won't is that they know that you're going to be straight on the phone saying, I'd like to talk to you about our great new. If, however, you do a post that says, I've just finished this painting, I'm not really sure about it, what do you think? And 150 people like it. Okay, there's 150 people that you can reach out to and say, thank you for liking the painting. Do you fancy having a chat? I'd love to talk to you about art. And it's picking those people and picking the platform and then maneuvering the conversation from it begins about art or guitars or cookery or whatever. It begins there and ends up with, here's what you do for work and here's what I do. Eric, you had a question.
I will use one of Mark's principles. This is a safe space here, so I'll ask the silly questions. Given that my social profiles probably will need to be rehauled altogether, and yep. I was well aware of that, And I realize that probably, you know, the cover page and the about sections are the two most important. What would you say afterwards are the most important areas to get the most bang for your buck initially? I know the whole thing is important, but after you do the cover page, the about, like, is the work,
Yeah.
the skills, the hobbies, what would you say?
It's all about the story. You know, it's all about you. And the reality is that um, I can tell you what I would find most attractive. That doesn't mean necessarily that it's what Mark or Tim would find most attractive. So the point is that this is about being yourself. And you know, for you, you know, your passion for racehorses and scuba diving are things that I have no interest in. That doesn't mean that I won't be interested in hearing about what you say about them, but it does mean that that's not a hobby or an interest that I share with you. So you can't legislate for that. But what you can do is you can talk about the stuff that you're comfortable talking about.
Great, thank you.
I'm very mindful of time. So if I just quickly move to the last slide, and then we can maybe have a bit more of a chat afterwards. I think that the things that we need to remember are that, first of all, for the next session, I'd like you to make a list of 10 or maybe a few more people that you would like to have a conversation with. So, you know, this person or the person in this role in this particular company, because one of the key levers that we can pull in being effective on social is where our network is situated. You know, whether you've got 500 or 50,000 connections, many of those will be in the wrong place. They'll be based on where you used to work 10 years ago or companies roles that you had in the past. The beauty about today forward is that the people that you connect to and the people that you try to engage can be exactly the people that you want to be having conversations with. So next thing is, as Mark said, all of you can book a one-to-one coaching session. They're only relatively short, and Mark will forward you the link for myself and or Tim. You can book a session which will help you to complete the homework bits for your profile. So the most important bit is that top box. And that the reason that's the most important bit is that that's the bit that people are going to see first. And if you don't make that interesting, what happens afterwards is irrelevant because no one's going to see it. The next thing is going to be that summary section, that about section, where you tell your big picture story. Because again, kind of to answer your question, Eric, that's the next thing people are going to alight on, is the stuff that you say about here's why you need to know me. And then next you need to start working through the work section, so that the current role that you have and one or more previous roles. Because what we need to do is we need to make sure that we are taking people on a journey. And for most of us, you know, we've worked at 5 or 10 or 20 places. And what we need to do is tell a coherent enough story that it doesn't feel like, oh, well, they've been at CAT for 9 months, so they're going to be leaving soon. So there's no point in me having a conversation with them. So the story that we need to tell is, I was here and I learned this, I was here and I learned this, I was here and I achieved this, I was here and I learned this, and then I came to CAT and now I'm home. This is where I'm supposed to be, because this is why this is so important and why you need to hear about this. And if we can get that message right, people won't be intimidated about talking with you, and they'll see the passion that you have for what it is that you guys do.
So gang, sorry, Adam, you go ahead. I was just going to wrap up.
I was just going to say we're just at time. So thank you all very much. Sorry, Mark, over to you.
No, it's fantastic. First of all, this has been fantastic. So let's have a digital round of applause, please, to Adam for what we did here today. Team, 2 thoughts. We will circulate the homework and the link to everybody, so you can book that one-on-one time. The second thought I would take away with is, you look for progress, not perfection. I'd ask you to consider, how many inbound leads and conversations have you got through LinkedIn over the last 3 to 4 months? And if the number is a lower number than you'd like, then what we have to look at is, how do we lose by moving forward with this? That moving forward for the next 30, 60, 90 days, how do we track progress and performance? The last thing I'm taking away is everything you're talking about, Adam. If I met somebody at a cocktail party, this is what I end up talking about. If I'm at a trade show, this is what we end up talking about to build connection before we get to business.
Yeah.
That's why Horace was so approachable, because I felt like I knew him. So I really do like this. But team, we'll, and also that smile on Horace, it's contagious. How could you not want to approach
It is,
that
isn't
guy?
it?
Yeah. But first of all, thank you, Tim and Adam. Team, we're back together next Tuesday to do this. I'd highly encourage you to book the one-on-one time. And Tim and Adam, if you send through to me that slide with the homework, we'll have Maria send it to everybody so we're all clear on what we're doing before next week. And again, thanks to everybody for joining today. Thanks for your time and attention and engagement. We appreciate everybody being here. Everybody have a fantastic Tuesday.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.